The jungle of Vela was not a safe place for any traveler. Strange sounds filled the trees at night, glowing eyes moved in the dark, and even the wind carried whispers of danger. But the human named Marcus walked carefully, his pack on his back, and his weapon close at hand. He was used to loneliness, used to danger, and used to silence that night. The silence broke. A sound cut through the air. It was not the growl of a predator or the hiss of a snake-like beast. It was softer, higher, and filled with pain. Marcus stopped in his tracks. His heart beat fast. He listened again. The sound came once more, a cry, weak and trembling. He should have ignored it. The rules of survival were clear: do not stop, do not trust, do not show weakness. But Marcus was human, and something inside him pulled toward the sound. He followed the noise, pushing branches aside, stepping over twisted roots. His boots pressed into damp soil as the cry grew louder. At last he saw it. In a small clearing, under the twisted roots of a great tree, lay a creature no bigger than a human child. Its fur was striped, black and silver, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Its eyes, wide and golden, looked at Marcus with both fear and hunger. The little cub was shaking, its ribs showing through. Its thin body, Marcus froze. Every instinct told him to back away. This was no ordinary animal. The markings were too strange, the eyes too sharp. This was an alien predator, a young one. And where there was a young one, there was always a mother. Still, the cub let out another weak cry. It tried to stand but fell back down. Its paws trembled. Its stomach growled so loud Marcus could hear it. He sighed. He had seen that look before. He had seen it in starving dogs back on Earth, in broken people during hard times. The look of pure hunger, the look of desperation. Slowly, Marcus knelt down. He opened his pack and pulled out a piece of dried meat. His hand shook a little. He held it out. The cub's nose twitched, its ears flicked. It stared at him with those glowing eyes. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, it crawled forward. Its tiny teeth sank into the food. It chewed fast, almost choking in its rush. Marcus kept still. His heart raced. The cub ate every bit, then licked his hand. The touch was rough but strangely gentle. The human almost smiled. For a moment he forgot the danger. He forgot the rules. He just saw a small life saved from hunger. The cub made a soft sound, almost like a purr. It pressed against his boot as if asking for more. Marcus shook his head. "Easy, little one," he whispered, even though he knew it could not understand. He gave it another small piece of food, and again the cub devoured it. This time it looked up at him, not just with hunger but with something else. Trust. Marcus sighed again. He knew he was making a mistake. By feeding it, he was crossing a line. If its mother came, things could end badly, very badly. But he could not walk away. He let the cub eat until it curled up on the ground, belly full, breathing slow. It yawned once, showing small, sharp teeth, then closed its eyes. The jungle grew quiet again. Marcus sat there listening. He expected a roar, a sudden attack, glowing eyes from the trees. But nothing came. Only silence. Only the sound of the cub's breathing. He looked up at the alien sky. Strange stars blinking between the trees. For the first time in weeks, Marcus felt something different. He felt less alone. The cub slept peacefully, trusting him. And Marcus, against all logic, stayed near it through the night, his weapon ready, his mind alert, but his heart unwilling to leave. What he did not know was that far away, in the deeper shadows of the jungle, something else was watching. Golden eyes, larger and sharper, had seen everything. A low growl rumbled in the darkness. The mother had heard the hungry cry too. Morning came with a gray mist hanging over the jungle. Marcus stretched his tired body, his back aching from sleeping against the rough tree trunk. The cub still lay curled up in the roots, its tiny chest rising and falling. Its fur shimmered faintly as the mist settled on it like dew. For a moment, Marcus almost believed last night had been a dream. He stood slowly, careful not to wake it. His instincts screamed at him to move, to leave before something worse arrived, yet his boots felt heavy. Something kept him there. He had saved a life, and that small act had tied him to the creature in a way he could not explain. By midday the cub stirred, blinking its golden eyes. It gave a small sound, somewhere between a chirp and a growl. Marcus chuckled under his breath. "Hungry again? Huh," he muttered. He broke off another piece of dried ration. The cub took it eagerly, its sharp little teeth crunching fast. When it finished, it looked up at him and gave a strange sound, almost like a call. Its ears flicked back, its body trembled. Marcus frowned. He followed the cub's gaze toward the shadows at the edge of the clearing. Something moved. The air shifted. Birds shot up from the canopy with panicked wings. Marcus's hand went to his weapon. His heart pounded. Out of the thick undergrowth came the sound of heavy steps, slow and measured. Each step carried weight, authority, and danger. Then he saw her, the Tigress mother, taller than any human, her fur black with streaks of burning gold. Her eyes glowed like fire, piercing through the mist. Her shoulders were wide, her claws long, and her movements carried a mixture of grace and deadly threat. She was no ordinary beast. She was intelligent, ancient, and powerful. The cub squeaked and bounded toward her, pressing against her leg with joy. But the mother's eyes never left Marcus. Her head tilted, her tail swayed low. A rumbling growl echoed from her chest, low and sharp enough to make Marcus's skin crawl. Marcus lifted his free hand slowly, showing he held no weapon. His other hand stayed near his side, ready if she attacked. His breath caught in his throat. One wrong move, and he would be dead. The Tigress mother stepped closer. Her nose twitched as she sniffed the air. Her gaze flicked to the pack where the smell of human food still lingered. She lowered her head, almost brushing the ground, circling him. Marcus could feel her heat, her strength, and the raw power beneath her skin. But there was something strange. In the way she moved, it was not the blind fury of a predator protecting her young. It was slower, careful, like she was studying him, testing him. The cub tugged at her fur and gave a soft sound. The mother looked down at it, then back at Marcus. Her eyes narrowed. She took another step closer. Now she was only an arm's length away. Marcus could see the patterns on her fur glowing faintly like embers. He could feel her breath on his face, warm and sharp with the scent of meat. His body screamed to run, but his mind held steady. He had faced soldiers, storms, and the black cold of space. He would not turn away now. Slowly, he crouched and pulled out one more piece of food. He set it on the ground between them, then backed away. The Tigress mother's eyes followed every movement. She lowered her head and sniffed the offering. The cub rushed forward and grabbed it, chomping happily. The mother allowed it, but her gaze never left Marcus. For long moments they stared at each other. The jungle held its breath. Time stretched, thin. Then slowly the mother gave a sound, not a roar, not a growl, but something deeper. A sound that carried warning and curiosity at the same time. She turned away, guiding her cub with her tail, but before disappearing into the shadows, she looked back one last time. Her golden eyes locked onto Marcus. They were not just the eyes of a beast, they were the eyes of something more. Something that could judge, decide, and perhaps even understand. Marcus stood frozen long after they were gone. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. He realized his legs were shaking. He had not just survived an encounter with a predator, he had been tested, and though he could not explain why, he felt that test was not over. The jungle whispered around him. A strange tension filled the air. He gathered his things, ready to move. But his heart was restless. Somewhere deep inside he knew this was only the beginning. The cub would return, and so would she. The shadows had not finished with him yet. Marcus could not get the image of her eyes out of his head, golden, burning, filled with intelligence and danger. The Tigress mother had looked at him not as prey but as something else, and that thought kept him awake through the next night. He made a small fire, keeping it low so the smoke would not rise too high. He cooked a bit of his remaining food and listened to the jungle. Every sound made his nerves tighten. Every shadow made his hand twitch toward his weapon. He had survived many dangers in his life, but this was different. This was not just about survival. This was about being measured, weighed, and judged by a creature far beyond the ordinary. By morning, the jungle grew heavy again. That same feeling of being watched returned. Marcus's chest tightened. He turned slowly, and there she was. The Tigress mother stepped out of the shadows like she had always belonged to them. Her body moved with the silence of a hunter, her muscles rippling under striped fur. Behind her padded the cub, small but curious, its golden eyes bright with recognition. It saw Marcus and gave a soft call, rushing ahead. The mother did not. "Stop it." The cub bounded close, nuzzling Marcus's boot. Marcus froze. His eyes moved to the towering figure only a few steps away. The mother's gaze locked on him, low growls rumbling in her chest, but she did not strike. Instead, she stalked in a slow circle around him. Marcus stood still. His weapon remained at his side, but he did not lift it. He knew one wrong move would end his life. The cub pawed at his leg, chirping with delight. The mother's eyes narrowed. Her tail lashed the air. She lowered her body slightly, not to leap, but to test. In a sudden movement, she lunged, not at his throat, but at his arm. Marcus raised it on instinct. Her paw slammed into him with shocking strength, knocking him backward onto the ground. His weapon slid out of reach. The cub squeaked and ran back toward its mother. Marcus gasped for breath. His arm throbbed. He had no doubt she could have broken it if she wanted, but she hadn't. She had struck to test him, to see what he would do. Slowly, Marcus pushed himself up. His chest heaved, pain burned through his muscles, yet he stood tall, refusing to bow. His eyes met hers again, steady and unbroken. The tigress tilted her head. Her ears twitched. A low rumble rolled from her chest again. She paced closer, pressing one massive paw onto his shoulder. Marcus grit his teeth as the weight pushed him down slightly. But he refused to fall completely. He pushed back, not striking, not attacking, just showing he would not be crushed. For long moments they stayed like that, predator and human locked in a silent battle of will. Then with a huff of warm breath she pulled back. Her golden eyes flicked once more toward him. This time, there was something new in them, a flicker of respect. The cub bounded forward again, chirping happily. It nuzzled Marcus's leg once more as if nothing had happened. The mother did not stop it. She simply stood behind, watching. Her tail flicked, her eyes sharp but calmer. Marcus bent down and pulled out another piece of food. His hand shook, but he placed it gently on the ground. The cub grabbed it quickly. Chewing fast, the mother gave a low sound, not of anger but of warning. She leaned close, her sharp teeth bared inches from Marcus's face. His breath caught, but he did not flinch. Then she pulled back. Her eyes lingered on him. She stepped away into the shadows again. The cub followed reluctantly, looking back at Marcus until the darkness swallowed them both. Marcus sank to the ground. His body shook. His arm ached from the strike. His shoulder still burned from her weight. Yet inside him, something stirred. It was not just fear anymore, it was something else, something he could not name. She had tested him and he had not broken. He realized this was only the beginning. She would come again, and each time the test would grow harder. But deep inside, Marcus felt he wanted her to return. He wanted to face her again, to prove something, not just to her, but to himself. The jungle around him seemed different now. The shadows no longer felt empty. The silence no longer felt lonely. He was no longer just a traveler passing through. He was part of something larger, something wild and dangerous. And though he did not yet understand, he knew the tigress mother had begun to accept him, step by step, through strength, through will, through fire. The jungle had a rhythm, and Marcus was beginning to feel it. Days passed, each one marked by the distant calls of beasts, the heavy silence of predators, and the constant weight of eyes watching him from the shadows. He built his fire smaller now, careful not to show too much smoke. He set traps around his camp, though he knew they would not stop the one who haunted his thoughts. The cub returned first, as it always did. It appeared at the edge of the clearing with a happy chirp, bounding on clumsy paws. Its golden eyes brightened the moment they landed on Marcus. He smiled despite himself. Holding out a strip of dried food, the cub rushed forward, devouring it in seconds, then nuzzled his hand. Moments later, the air shifted. Marcus felt it before he saw her. The tigress mother emerged, silent as falling mist. Her golden eyes glowed faintly, fixed on him with a steady, unreadable fire. She no longer came roaring, no longer struck with claws to test him. Now she stood at a distance, watching, measuring. Marcus moved slowly, careful. He gave the cub more food. He did not step closer to her, but he did not step back either. The cub ran between them, tail swishing happily. It pressed against its mother's leg, then bounded back to Marcus, back and forth as if tying them together. The tigress tilted, her head, her ears twitched, her tail brushed the ground. Marcus realized she was allowing this. She was letting the cub treat him as something safe. That thought made his chest tighten. Nights became longer, and she returned again and again, always in the shadows, always silent. Sometimes she came close enough that Marcus could hear her breathing. Other times she lingered in the distance, her eyes glowing like twin lanterns in the dark. But she always came. Marcus knew this was dangerous. He told himself again and again that he should leave. Yet every time he packed his bag, the cub's cry pulled him back. Every time he thought of walking away, those golden eyes stopped him. He could not explain it, but the bond was there, invisible yet strong. One night the bond grew even clearer. Marcus sat near his low fire when the cub crawled into his lap. Its fur was soft, its purr low. He froze, staring across the flames. The tigress mother stood there. Her eyes narrowed, her teeth glinted in the firelight. Marcus waited for her to strike, but she didn't. She watched, and after a long silence, she lowered her body to the ground, stretching out like a great cat, resting. Her tail swayed, her ears flicked. She was still dangerous, but she was no longer just a threat. The cub dozed off in Marcus's lap, and he found himself stroking its fur gently. The sound of its breathing calmed him. He looked at the mother, and though fear still burned in his chest, he felt something else. A connection. Fragile and forbidden. By dawn, she had gone again, leaving him with the cub. Marcus carried it back to the edge of the jungle where she always took it. He set it down gently, and the cub chirped before vanishing into the shadows. But just as Marcus turned to leave, she appeared again. Her massive body blocked his path. Her eyes glowed brighter in the morning light. Marcus froze, his heart pounding. She stepped closer, close enough that her fur brushed against his arm. The heat of her body radiated into him. She lowered her head and sniffed his shoulder, her breath warm. Her sharp teeth glinted, and Marcus braced himself. Yet she did not bite. Instead, she gave a deep sound, low and rumbling, almost like approval. Then she stepped back, guiding her cub deeper into the jungle. Marcus stood there long after they disappeared. His hands shook. His chest rose and fell. With heavy breaths, he had been touched by her, trusted for a single moment. That trust was dangerous, forbidden, but it had already taken root inside him. Days later, the pattern continued. The cub came first, joyful, trusting. The mother followed, silent, watchful, and Marcus found himself waiting for them, wanting them to return. The bond had formed, no matter how much he told himself to resist it. The jungle no longer felt empty. He was no longer alone. Something, wild and powerful, had chosen to let him close. And though he knew the danger, though he knew the rules of survival, Marcus could not walk away, not anymore, because the forbidden bond had already been sealed, not with words, but with trust, with fire, and with the quiet understanding between predator and man. The jungle had begun to change for Marcus. What was once only a place of danger now felt like a place of waiting. He woke each morning half expecting to hear the cub's soft cry, and he slept each night with the memory of golden eyes watching. From the dark, the forbidden bond had grown stronger, but so had the danger that came with it. That morning something was wrong. The jungle was too quiet. The birds did not sing. The trees did not rustle. Even the insects seemed to vanish. Marcus knew the signs. He had felt this silence on other worlds, before battles, before ambushes. He tightened the straps of his pack and checked his weapon. He crouched low, listening. Then he saw it. A mark, in the dirt. Boot prints not his own. Human. He traced them with his fingers. Fresh. Heavy. And more than one. Marcus cursed under his breath. He had heard rumors of hunters, men who traveled between stars to capture rare creatures and sell. Them they cared nothing for balance, nothing for life, only for profit. His stomach tightened as he realized what they were here for, the cub and its mother. He followed the trail carefully, keeping to the shadows. The prints led deeper into the jungle, and soon he found them, a group of 5, armored in patchwork, gear, their weapons sharp and deadly. They whispered in low voices, setting strange devices into the ground. Marcus's chest grew cold. He recognized the devices, pulse traps, nets of burning energy that could drop even the strongest beast. He watched as the hunters coated the ground with bait, fresh meat dripping with scent. Their plan was simple, cruel, and deadly. He crouched, behind thick roots, thinking fast. If the mother and cub came here, they would be caught, torn from the jungle, caged and sold across the stars. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, his hands curled into fists. He could walk away, he told himself, again and again. This was not his fight. He had no bond to these creatures, but his heart rejected the lie. He could still see the cub's small face, hungry and trusting. He could still feel the mother's hot breath against his skin, testing him, accepting him. Marcus knew he could not abandon them. He moved back quickly, his mind racing. He returned to his camp and began working. His hands pulled wires, sharpened sticks and small charges from his pack. Human tricks, human traps. They were nothing compared to the technology of the hunters, but they were clever, and cleverness was what he had. By nightfall, the hunters, spread out, waiting in the dark for their prey. The traps glowed faintly, hidden in the dirt. Marcus slipped through the shadows, setting his own surprises. Pits covered with leaves, lines of cord tied to noisemakers, small flashes ready to blind. He worked quickly, silently. Every move carried risk. But he pushed forward. His chest burned with fear. But deeper than fear was something stronger, anger, protection. Then came the sound. A soft chirp, familiar and warm. The cub stepped into the clearing, its golden eyes wide, sniffing at the air. Behind it moved the great shadow of its mother. Her golden stripes glowed faintly, her head low, her ears flicking. She sniffed, sensing something wrong. But before she could move, the hunters triggered their trap. The ground flared with light, nets of energy shot up. The cub squealed in fear, the mother roared, the sound shaking the trees. The hunters stepped out, weapons raised, their laughter cruel. Marcus struck. His traps went off first. A roar of sound, sharp flashes of light. The hunters cursed, blinded, disoriented. Marcus charged from the shadows, swinging a branch tipped. With fire, he slammed into one hunter, knocking him down. He rolled, grabbed the man's weapon, and fired. The jungle exploded with chaos. The mother tore at the nets, her claws glowing as they sliced through burning wires. The cub scrambled. Free crying, Marcus fought hard, dodging blasts of energy, striking with speed and precision. He was only one man, but he had surprise. He had fury, and he had the jungle on his side. A hunter lunged at him, but Marcus ducked low, pulling the man into one of his pits. The scream that followed was cut short. Another tried to aim, but Marcus hurled a flash charge. The burst of light blinded him. The mother pounced, her massive body crushing him in seconds. The fight raged, blood and fire mixing in the night. The cub pressed against Marcus's leg at one point, trembling but refusing to run. He pushed it back toward its mother, shouting, "Go! Stay with her!" His voice was raw, desperate. Finally, the last hunter fled into the jungle, his weapon dropped, his face pale with terror. Marcus stood panting, his chest heaving. His arms burned with bruises, cuts stung across his skin. His weapon shook in his hands, but he was still alive. And so were they. The mother stood tall, her fur glowing in the moonlight, her golden eyes fixed on him. She stepped closer, her breath heavy, her body scarred from the nets, but unbroken. She looked at him not with suspicion, not with anger, but with something deeper. She lowered her head slowly, pressing her forehead to his chest. The cub chirped and curled against his leg. Marcus stood frozen, his heart pounding. In that moment he knew. This was no longer survival, no longer chance. This was trust. This was bond. And it had been sealed in fire and blood. The jungle burned with silence after the fight. The air still carried the sharp sting of smoke. The ground still smelled of scorched metal and blood. Marcus stood with his chest heaving, his arms shaking. Around him lay the remains of broken traps, scattered weapons, and the lifeless bodies of hunters who had dared to invade. But the battle was not over. The fleeing hunter had not gone far. Marcus knew men like that. They never left empty-handed. He could already hear distant calls, whistles echoing through the jungle. More would come, stronger, heavier. The mother tigress lifted her head, her golden eyes narrowing at the sound. She knew it too. Her cub pressed against her leg, chirping. With fear, Marcus looked at her, and for the first time he did not see only danger. He saw an ally. He saw strength. He saw family. The jungle darkened quickly as night fell. Shadows stretched long, and the air grew heavy with mist. Marcus moved, fast gathering what little he had left. His pack, his wires, his charges. He had only a few tools, but tools in human hands could become weapons sharper than any claw. The mother growled low, watching him work. Her massive body shifted with impatience, but she did not stop him. The cub sniffed at the items curiously, tilting its head as Marcus tied cords and set hidden spikes into the dirt. Then the sounds came closer, heavy boots crunching on leaves, metallic clicks as weapons were loaded. The hunters had returned, more of them, at least 8. They spread out, torches glowing, their voices rough and cruel. They thought they were the predators in this jungle, but Marcus and the tigress were waiting. The first trap triggered with a sharp snap. A flash of light exploded in the dark, blinding 2 hunters. They shouted, firing wildly into the trees. The mother leapt, her claws slicing through one before he could scream. Her roar shook the night, the sound so deep the ground itself seemed to tremble. Marcus moved with speed, rolling into cover. He pulled wires tight, sending another hunter crashing into a pit of sharpened spikes. He grabbed a fallen weapon, firing bursts of energy into the dark. His aim was quick, not perfect, but enough to keep them off balance. The hunters shouted orders, forming lines, but the jungle betrayed them. Marcus knew its patterns, its shadows, its tricks. He had watched it for days. He used every sound, every tree, every root as a weapon. The mother fought like a storm. Her claws glowed in the moonlight. Her teeth snapped through armor. She tore into them with fury, but not wild fury. It was controlled, focused. She fought to protect, to defend, to end the threat once and for all. The cub stayed hidden, its golden eyes peeking out from the roots of a great tree. It whimpered, once, but did not run. It watched, learning, waiting. The battle raged on. Fire burst through the clearing, gunshots echoed, and Marcus felt the heat of energy bolts scorch past his face. He hurled one of his last charges. The explosion sent 2 hunters flying, their armor shattered. But one managed to corner him, a large man with a blade crackling with energy. Marcus barely raised his weapon in time. The strike knocked him back, pain shooting through his side. The hunter raised the blade again, ready to end it. Before he could, a shadow crashed into him. The tigress mother slammed the man into the ground, her claws piercing through metal and flesh. She roared over him, the sound drowning his final scream. Marcus gasped for breath, sweat pouring down his face, his vision blurred, but he forced himself to stand. The last of the hunters tried to flee. Marcus lifted the weapon, firing one last burst. The shot struck true, dropping the man in the dirt. Silence followed, heavy and complete. Marcus staggered forward, his chest burning. His arms ached. His body screamed with exhaustion. Yet he could not stop staring at her. The tigress mother stood in the center of the clearing, her fur glowing with streaks of gold, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Blood stained her claws. Scars burned across her body. But her eyes were still fire. The cub ran to her, chirping with relief. She lowered her massive head, licking it gently. Then slowly she turned her gaze to Marcus. For a long moment they stared at each other in the moonlit silence, predator and man, warrior and survivor. Then she stepped closer. Her huge form cast a shadow over him. She lowered, her head again brushing her fur against his arm. It was not a strike, not a test, it was acknowledgement. It was bond. Marcus closed his eyes, his body trembling with exhaustion. He reached out, his hand brushing her fur for the first time. It was warm, alive, powerful. The cub chirped happily, pressing against them both. The jungle had gone silent again. But this silence was different. It was not the silence of fear. It was the silence after a storm. The silence of victory. Marcus knew more would come. He knew the danger was far from over. But as he stood beside her, with the cub at their feet, he felt something new. He was not alone anymore. He was part of a family bound by blood and battle, and together, in the dark of the jungle, they had become unstoppable. The jungle lay in silence after the battle. The smoke had drifted away. The bodies of the hunters scattered across the ground, and the faint glow of their broken machines flickered in the dark. Marcus leaned against a tree, his chest heaving, his body heavy with pain and exhaustion. Yet his eyes stayed fixed on the tigress mother and her cub. She stood tall in the moonlight, her golden stripes glowing like fire painted across her fur. The cub pressed close to her leg, safe now, yet still looking at Marcus with wide, trusting eyes. He had fought for them, bled for them, and now something had changed forever. The mother's gaze locked onto him. Her golden eyes were sharp, piercing, yet softer than before. She stepped closer, her massive body moving with both power and grace. Marcus forced himself to stand straight, even though every bone in his body wanted to collapse. He would not show weakness. Not now. She circled him once, slowly. Her tail brushed against the dirt. Her ears flicked at the sounds of the jungle. She stopped in front of him, so close that he could feel her breath on his face, hot and heavy. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Only the weight of her eyes. Then she lowered her head, touching her forehead gently against his chest. Marcus froze. His breath caught in his throat. His heart thundered. He knew this was not a strike, not a test. This was something else. This was trust. The cub chirped happily and bounded forward, pressing itself between them. Its little tail wagged. Its golden eyes shone as if it understood everything. Marcus looked down at it and let out a shaky laugh. His hand moved without thinking, brushing over its fur, warm and soft. The mother watched, her eyes following his every move. But she did not stop him. Instead, she gave a low, deep sound, not of warning, but of recognition. Marcus realized then that he had been accepted, not as prey, not as intruder, but as something more. The night grew quiet. The danger had passed for now, but Marcus knew the hunters would return one day. Men like them never gave up so easily. They had seen the cub, seen the mother, and the promise of profit would drive them back. But he also knew he would not run. Not anymore. The mother moved closer again, lowering her body slightly. For a moment, Marcus thought she meant to rest. But then he realized what she was doing. She was offering him something. Protection. Belonging, a place in her world. It was not spoken in words, but in gesture, in instinct, in trust. Marcus dropped his weapon, letting it fall to the dirt. He stepped forward and placed his hand against her fur. The warmth of her body ran through him, steady and powerful. The cub chirped and climbed onto his leg, as if sealing the choice. In that instant, the bond was complete. Human and beast, predator and prey, two different worlds bound together by survival and by something deeper. The mother gave a soft rumble, her tail swishing. Marcus felt it not just in his ears, but in his chest, as if it carried into his very heart. The jungle began to stir again. Birds called in the distance. The wind rustled the trees. Life returned. But for Marcus, everything had changed. He was no longer a lone traveler, no longer just a man passing through. He was part of something wild, something greater than himself. He looked at the tigress mother and the cub, and he knew he could never walk away. They had chosen him, and he had chosen them. The galaxy outside might laugh, might fear, might try to take them apart. But here, in this jungle, they had formed a family. The cub yawned, curling up at his feet, its little body warm against his boot. The mother lay down nearby, her golden eyes still watching him, but now without threat. Her gaze was steady, calm, like the gaze of a guardian. Marcus sat, down beside them, his body aching but his heart steady. He looked up at the strange alien stars shining above the trees. For the first time in years, he did not feel lost. He did not feel alone. He felt like he belonged. The choice had been made, not by words but by action, not by promise but by trust. And in the shadows of the jungle, under alien skies, a man, a cub, and a tigress mother began a story that would echo far beyond the trees.